Tropical Storm Helene is expected to rapidly intensify and to become a major hurricane as it makes its way towards the U.S. Gulf Coast. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis declared a state of emergency in 61 counties ahead of the storm's arrival, and he urged residents to evacuate. Residents have been filling sandbags in preparation for anticipated flooding. Meteorologist Matthew Cappucci joins us from Orlando, Florida for more. Matthew, welcome. Give us an idea of how powerful and dangerous this storm could be.
Yeah, most definitely. So right now, it's still only a tropical storm with winds around 100 kilometers per hour. The issue, it's moving over incredibly warm water temperatures around 35, 36 degrees Celsius and weak upper level winds. So there won't really be much at all to kind of knock it off kilter, for which reason we're favoring rapid intensification. And I think by Thursday, when this makes landfall in the Big Bend of Florida, it might have winds over 120 miles per hour, meaning close to 180 kilometers per hour, Category 3, maybe worse, and a storm surge of 3+ meters. So this could be the strongest hurricane of the year and the strongest to hit Florida since 2022.
We know sometimes these storms can take erratic movements. How sure are we about where it's going to land and when?
It's actually been a bit of an issue so far from a forecasting standpoint, because earlier we were trying to figure out where the center of the storm would form. It's still organizing right now. And so trying to model it and predict where it's going is tough until a storm center forms. It's like playing pin the tail on a donkey when you don't have the donkey. And so in this case, the center earlier on jogged farther south and west. And the biggest question now, if that center stays a little farther west, it might pass over the Yucatan Peninsula, cutting back on how much time it has over the open ocean, the warm waters, and cutting back on intensity. But if it's just, say, 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers farther east, it'll have more time over the open ocean and the warm waters and be stronger. So we're still pretty confident it'll come ashore in the Big Bend of Florida, a little bit north of, say, Tampa, east of Tallahassee. But strength will be a question, and that depends on the exact track.
You mentioned potential storm surges over 3 meters. If you look at that, but then you also look at we're not exactly sure where it's going to land in the end, how do you prepare, and how do you prepare your citizens if you are involved in the government in any of these towns, municipalities?
That's an incredibly difficult question for a lot of folks to answer, but we always tell folks, run from the water, hide from the wind. You can shelter in place in a sturdy building from wind, but you can't really hide from water. You have to basically outrun it inland. And unfortunately, this part of Florida is so close to sea level, it's difficult to do that. Evacuations are a very complex, nuanced thing. You have people who might have mobility challenges, they might be elderly, they might have jobs that might not let them leave. There might be a financial consideration too. People might not be able to afford to move inland. And so it's a really tricky question. Right now, there are some counties issuing mandatory evacuations, but ultimately, hopefully folks make the right call, get out of their harm's way when necessary, because this one could be a really bad storm.
This is the 8th storm of the current hurricane season. We have another one right now in the Pacific, which we talked about earlier. How is the development of these storms changing as the climate shifts?
So interestingly, we are forecasting a hyperactive season, and yet we had a big gap of no storms from mid to late August into mid-September, which is very unusual. The first time we've seen that since 1968. Interestingly, climate change and the warming of ocean waters and the atmosphere is not tied to how many storms we get, but it makes those that we get more prone to rapid intensification and becoming stronger. So ultimately, the number of storms doesn't really matter, and there's not a climate signal, climate link, but right now, water temperatures are near record warm. We have record oceanic heat content, so hurricane fuel in those warm waters. And subsequently, this storm might rapidly intensify, more so than anticipated. And that does bear the fingerprint of a warming world.
All right, that's meteorologist Matthew Cappucci. Thank you very much.
Thank you.